Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar this evening on Back to School with TI-Nspire Technology. I'm glad you've all been patient and waiting for us as we kick off our affairs this evening. And tonight I'm joined by a colleague of mine, Brian Lannen, whose name will come up on the screen shortly. Mine's on the screen at the moment there. I work with Texas Instruments. And I taught in high schools for quite some years, too many I care to put an exact figure to. And of course, as you can see, I'm passionate about the use of technology, as is my colleague, Brian Lannen. Now, let me see if I can get Brian on the line. Let's see if I can find him. Are you there, Brian?
I am. I've been listening, and now I'm talking.
Very good. All right, so here's my colleague Brian up on the screen at the moment, and he has taught, we were having discussions about this before, just over 28 years. Are we happy with that figure, Brian?
Look, I'm happy enough with that, and you can round it down if you like.
I rounded mine down. Sorry about that. So Brian's been teaching mainly up in the regional part of Victoria, but he's also ventured over to New South Wales and New York, and he's currently teaching at Wodonga TAFE. Is that right?
That is correct. We've got the new batch of engineering students just marched in this week.
Very good.
And they're very excited.
Now, the first thing we're going to have a look at on this session is unboxing the calculator. That is, what is in the box. So I think it's important that teachers know exactly what their students should be keeping and perhaps obviously what they're throwing out, because we find that some students throw out some pretty important stuff. Then Brian's going to share with us some of the things that he does just as he starts the students off. What does he do with them as they're bringing their calculators into class, and other resources that Brian's going to share with us. Then we're going to have a look at where you can access the sorts of resources on our webpage. We have an Australian curriculum page, and we also have now a senior curriculum one, that being for years 11 and 12, not the retirees senior. And then finally we're going to select some activities, but here's the twist in tonight's webinar. We're not going to select them. Well, we will select them based on the feedback we get from our participants. So hopefully you've seen that there's a chat space, an opportunity to talk to us. There should be a little menu off the top of your screen. If you haven't seen it, you might have brought it up already, and it might be sitting on the right-hand side. So you can send messages to Brian and myself and put those messages, and now someone's already sent one. That's pretty good. I'm impressed with that. And through that chat space, you can tell us the sorts of things you're currently teaching, what year levels, and what you would like to see. Are you wanting stuff for Year 7, Year 11, Year 12, somewhere in between? And you send your comments to that little chat space. Now, it's on my computer, that chat space is upgraded a little bit. It looks slightly different, but it works the same way. If you're having trouble hearing us on your computer, then you can call into that toll-free number, 1-800-708-203, and it will ask for a meeting number, and that's the meeting number that you want to use. The other thing we wanted to talk about tonight is the fact that there's a whole range of extra professional development opportunities for teachers all over this country, and we refer to them as Learn, Energize, Connect. They're the workshops available for teachers. If you'd like to know more about those, you can send us an email at Teacher Support. You'll get that email off our website as well. One of the first workshops is on March the 18th, the Code to Success in Mathematics, and that's purposely ambiguous because code can mean two things, as in a secret, which we will uncover, but also coding in terms of the Queensland curriculum, where they've introduced programming into their curriculum, the first state in Australia to do so. And then head down south, there's some PD opportunities there in Geelong and Melton, and there's a lot more coming around the nation, so keep an eye out that. Send us an email and you'll find out about them. And the AAMT have also got an event on March the 18th, I understand, Connect with Maths Day. So there's one to look out for. So let's have a look what's in the box. That is, what should students be seeing when they unpack their calculator for the first time? So that's what they've probably got in their hot little hands. The thing that their parents have, that receipt, I encourage people to scan the receipt, which is what I do with all of the stuff I purchase. I scan the receipt, well, not everything, important stuff that I purchase. I scan the receipt and save a copy on my computer, and that way I'll know where to find it should I need it at any time in the future. And also register for the 3-year warranty. There's a link URL on the box, and it runs through the instructions on how to register. So that's an extra 2 years, so the product's covered for 3 years in Australia, which is good. So make sure you keep your receipt as a takeaway from that. What else is in the box? Obviously the calculator. That's the thing that the students keep. And some of them can't find the slide case, as Brian said to me earlier on. It's called a slide case for reason because it slides on the back, and that's where it is when it's in the box. So you slide that off and make sure you put it on the front to protect it when you're carrying it around. So that's one thing we want to keep. The next thing we've got is the cable. Now, sometimes students refer to this as a charging cable. Yes, it is. It can be used to charge, but it can also be used to transfer files from your computer to your calculator. So it's important that you keep that particular cable. Make sure you know where it is. And then there's another cable, before I go into the other cable, they're the two ends, and it's a fairly generic sort of USB, obviously on one end to connect to the computer, and the other one is the, I guess it's the larger one, because most mobile phones have a smaller micro USB now, slightly thinner and flatter. There's another cable, which is the calculator to calculator cable, very important if students want to be able to transfer files to each other's calculators. Often when we're using files in the classroom, the teacher might give it to one student and get them to send it between students. So that's one that they want to take with them into class. Probably less useful at home, but certainly in class it's very useful when they want to send files. And one of the other most important things in that box is this, and that is the license code. When the students buy the calculator, they also get a software license so that they can do the sorts of things that Brian and I will be showing you tonight, and that is using the files on the computer. So any file that they use on the computer can be transferred onto their calculator, or a file that starts on the calculator can go to the computer and back again, email to the teacher, whatever it might be, but they need that software. And most importantly, if they're going to charge their calculator using the computer, they must have that software on their computer. If they've lost that, there's another one that they can use called Computer Link software. That's free, but this is the one that comes with the actual calculator, so you might as well get it out of the box, install it on your computer, register it, and it's yours. So, we've been chatting for a little while. Use that chat window to give us more information about the sorts of things you'd like to hear on this webinar. Otherwise, Brian and I will run through the sorts of activities that we just do with students rather than you guys having a choice. So, all that being said, I'm going to pass on over to Brian. He's joining us from Yakandanda. Is that right, Brian? You're up in Yakandanda?
Yep, sweet home Yakandanda.
And Brian's going to tell us about what he does with his students just as they're starting to bring the calculators into class.
So you should now be seeing my screen, which is very similar to Peter's screen.
I'm seeing a bunch of folders, and we're listening. That's the one.
Use the chat window, as we said. What you'd like to chat about in your chat window and have input into your webinar, tell us what state or territory you're from, what course in particular you're teaching and would like to find out more about. Remember, the purpose of this webinar is to save you time. We know it's the start of the school year. We know it's a busy time of the school year, and if we can give you a couple of tricks that will save you time now, then we hope that that will be beneficial to you. What year level, and if you've actually looked at the website, are there any specific activities or lessons that you'd like us to review? We ask you this because you may well be familiar with the national curriculum activities that are on the website that have been there for a couple of years now and have progressively been added to. But late last year, a new section opened up called Senior Curriculum Inspired. Again, following the national curriculum, but particularly looking at how it has been interpreted as it's been filtered down into the different states and territories. A bunch of wonderful activities already exists, and it's only been there since about December, so that might be a lovely find for you. Okay, so back to school resource ready. Our emphasis this evening is to point you towards some resources. Look, I might point out, if you're just going back a slide, if you're doing the typing into the chat window thing, which we hope you are, that's great, but as Peter pointed out before, we are recording this webinar, and if today, as you look at your calendar, is not the 3rd of February 2016, you're actually watching a recording. Do you understand that? So if you're viewing the recording, the chat bit's not going to work. I just thought I'd point that out. So back to school resource read. Is that okay, Foxy?
Yeah, that's good,
I just didn't want people watching a recording and thinking it was interactive.
That's it. Very good, yes.
Back to school. Look, we know that's perhaps not a favourite phrase of many teachers and students alike, but we do hope to make it a more joyous thing for you by helping you out with some inspiring and some good. I'm just reading some of the text that comes through, people commenting on my comments, yes. So hopefully we will save you some time here. The Student Resource Centre is something that I certainly direct my students to. The Australian Curriculum Inspired activities is something that I have been using quite a lot, and the Senior Curriculum Inspired new component to this is certainly something I will be using a lot more this year. What I want to share with you is, and this is resources that I've used with a particular class, but you might want to think how you could adapt it to your class. At my school in Wodonga, which is only half an hour from Yakandanda, we run a 4-week, we had the luxury of a 4-week step-up program at the end of last year. So this is Year 11 classes going into Year 12, and I had the step-up class for my students going into Year 12 Mathematical Methods, which is the calculus course in Victoria. So I point them towards webinars, and I actually played some of these webinars to them. The webinar that you're participating in now, yes, it's primarily targeted to teachers, but I can tell you what, there's a lot of good stuff in the webinars that would be very beneficial to students. There was a set of webinars, and you can find them on the website because they've been recorded, as you know, called 2016 and Beyond, and that's specifically looking at changes to the curriculum as the national curriculum takes up. So 2016 and Beyond, with some it specifically addresses the curriculum points and corresponding activities. I played part of that for my students, and I then set it as homework for, download it and play the rest at home. Exam readiness, absolutely wonderful. That's on the Student Resource Centre, part of the website, and part of that is also linking through to little video clips, YouTube video clips, and topic by topic. So, for example, if you've got a mathematical methods class, you can play a topic on introductory calculus or on domain and range, and that's all accessible from the website. There are others that I've particularly asked students to tune into. My own daughter, in fact, is doing specialist mathematics, and there's times when I've, in the evening, tuned into a webinar, and I thought, Stephanie, this would be good for you as well. So we've watched some particularly on some of the calculus topics. In the Student Resource Centre, I've already mentioned that Prepare for Exams, linking through to YouTube clips. You can actually, if you prefer, rather than going to the TI website, you can go to the YouTube and just do a bit of a hunt That might be a bit of a scattergun approach, though. If you start with the TI website, you're at least being directed to some of the ones that our teachers have prepared and our T-Cube trainers have prepared, particularly with an Australian flavour. There's activities and lesson plans on the website, as I've already mentioned. Australian Curriculum Inspired runs from Year 7 to 10 Advanced. A great wealth of activities there. And the new edition is Senior Curriculum Inspired, which I'm quite excited about. What you're seeing now, I've added into this evening's webinar PowerPoint some slides that I've used with my step-up class last year. So my students got a copy of these slides as a PowerPoint presentation and some of the other key documents that linked to it. I set them up with this little corny thing to start the show off as we sort of launch into the new study. I overview with them the outline of the course. So there's our 4 areas. I show them how that's going to be assessed. So this is Victoria. So Victorian teachers would already be aware of this. Interstate teachers, you'd have your own arrangement. I think it's very important to show students up front what the prescribed outcomes of the course are. And you'll see here that the third outcome is actually use of technology, select and appropriately use. So that means the students must learn to use their technology, and if they don't, then they're actually failing to meet the outcomes of the course. I overviewed the textbook that the students had, and I showed them how the various textbook chapters relate to the 4 sections of the prescribed study design. This last slide, some useful resources. This is all hyperlinked, and when I gave it to my students, I gave it to them in a folder. So I gave them not only the PowerPoint presentation, but in the folder I hyperlinked some of these things, such as the study design. So if I click on that, you're waiting now for my internet to do something, and it's actually going to the VCAA and opening up. I will jump across, wait for it to happen. It's taking a little while. And it should open up. You hear me say should. Everyone's going to the VCAA website tonight. That's what's happening. It's just overwhelmed with popularity. And so it will open up the study design. There it is. So for 2016 onwards. Now what I gave to my students, I had actually downloaded that as a PDF and gave it to them in the same file as the PowerPoint. Now you will be receiving a copy of this PowerPoint that I demonstrate now. When you hit the links, it will take you to the various places on the website. Now some of these are commercial, some are government. iTute is, I guess, a share site for solutions for past papers and also some example papers. MathsTute is a commercial interest that has some lovely tutorial videos on solving exam-style questions. This one here also commercial. This one here, well, this is commercial, but it's got to be your favourite. The Texas Instruments website. Generally, if you just type education.ti.com, that's your main starting point. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Webinar 2016. Now, for my students, I downloaded the webinar files and gave that to them. They come up the front of the class, they bring their USB stick and they get the folder with this PowerPoint and its various hyperlinked files. Now for you, when you get this PowerPoint, if you follow that link, it won't give you the downloaded webinar. What it will do is it will take you to the place on the web where you can download it. So you'll hit that little button there and you download the webinar. You may then find that you might have to also download a player to play it. Exam readiness set of webinars as well. So where you would look on the website, this is the opening page for education.ti.com. If you type that in, chances are, instead of a Sydney Harbour Bridge, you might see a Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm just actually going to swap across to my web browser and show you what's going on there. You can see I've got this saved as a tab. So if I go to the Texas Instruments website, this is what I see up front. It's Australian. Can you see the little tab here that says Site, Australia and New Zealand? If yours doesn't say Australia, click on that, and it will take you to the site list for Texas Instruments websites across the planet, basically. And you can see the United States was last, but of course Australia is first. And if you're like me, you click on the bit that says Remember Country. So that means whenever I just type in education.ti.com, I get this page here. So this is the various main tabs here. Student Resource Centre I mentioned. I'll quickly show you that because there's just such wonderful stuff there. And this also was relatively new last year. And it's a slow response. It's obviously the students are onto it already. Getting started. I won't click on it, but what that is it's a set of tutorials. Hello, Mum and Dad told me I had to learn to drive this new calculator. You know, my maths teacher's not giving me much help. Of course, that's not you. But I'd need to work out how to drive this calculator. There's a set of tutorials, videos instructing them how to drive the various parts of the calculator. Prepare for exams. This is great. Now, I know here we are February, but later on in the year, send them to this. We're emphasising only 2 states here at the moment, but I think you could see a lot of it would be generic anyway. And I've hit on mathematical methods, of course I'm teaching, and you can see here I've got a set of tabs. Each of these link to a YouTube video. Let's go with transition matrices. Now, this may not work so well over a live webinar because there's going to be timing differences, but when you play this on your own computer, it'll be a winner. And so you can see it's gone to YouTube, transition matrices, and I'm just going to jump it forward a bit. I'm not going to try and give you the audio because that will have a time delay. And what the audio that is over this are our T-Cube trainers talking students through the activities and the mathematics behind it. So that's just a great one. And as you can see, they're only short. What's this one? 9 minutes. So that's just a great revision tool for students. I don't think you need to wait till the end of the year exam preparation to start your revision. So that's what I've been doing. I'm going to get out of it now and just go back there. So that's some of the key places. Student Resource Centre, Australian curriculum, which we mentioned before in the new senior curriculum inspired activities, and also with the webinars is one of the key tabs there. So there's a tab to tonight's webinar. It's advertised as upcoming when I took this screenshot. But if you hit the On Demand tab, then you can take students to the list of activities that I said, particularly the 2016 preparation and the exam readiness webinars. Very, very worthwhile. The webinars run for about 1 hour. I suggest you set it as a homework activity. So there's our Student Resource Centre, Australian Curriculum Inspired, list of activities on these tabs here by year level and then by strand. And here's the new one, Senior Curriculum Inspired. Please don't be disheartened if you live outside of the ACT or Victoria. As I said, a lot of the activities are going to be transferable. It's just that we haven't yet mapped them all for the state codes at this stage.
I can tell you, Brian, that the Queensland one is very close to being on its way, because that's part of my role, is to get those in. And we have quite a few activities up and ready for Queensland. And as you say, we're getting the other states on board as quick as we can.
Fantastic. I'm going to hand back to you, Peter, because I know I've been watching the chat here and a lot of things have been coming in.
They certainly have. Now, there was a few of them also looking for activities specific to getting the student started. Just give me one moment. My computer's gone onto a go slow mode.
It happens when we get so many things happening now. So I've just stopped sharing.
Yep. And we should see my desktop. This is where we call Application Lotto, where we hope that it lands on the right file. And there it is. So this one here, let me just jump back up a little bit because we're seeing too many clues here.
Oh, you're giving it away.
I am, but my computer's gone really slow, which is annoying. All right, so whilst that people are going to see my the answers there, unfortunately my computer's almost ground to a dead halt. So what we're looking at is a crossword puzzle of a different sort. So as you can see, there are clues for the crosswords, there are clues for the downwords, and in the first case, if they try and do one across, they would go into the graph application. So the first thing listed in the clue is it's the application that the student needs to open up. So let me show you. We've got graphs, geometry, measurement. Now I know the answer is actually written up there. We're getting that. So let's see if my computer will let me swap across to another application. There it is. It's being friendly. So the first clue said it was graphs, wasn't it? Let's check. It was a graph application. My computer's almost frozen again.
The geometry thereof.
Yep, and geometry. And that wasn't geometry. It must have been, just read back to me, do you know what they were off the top of your head, Brian? Because my computer's frozen.
I thought it was the geometry part of this.
Let's have a look in here. Geometry.
Number 8.
And measurement, wasn't it? Yes, measurement. There we go. So clue one across was on the graph application, looking at geometry and measurement, and we can see that we've got two options for a 5-letter clue, and that is slope or angle. And that's where the student then had to look for another option. So when they looked at one down, that was on a calculator application. And here's the part where you want to be able to help your students. You can see on my emulation there that I've got two applications open, 1.1 and 1.2. Let's just go back to 1.1, and the menu is going to help me decide what application that is. It's a calculator menu. Now, what some students do is when they're on the graph application, I go, oh, I'll put a calculator application here, and you can see that's at another page. It's easy to see on the software. I've now got 3 pages open, or 3 applications, one on each page. 2 of them are calculator applications. I only need the one calculator application open in this case. So the students could use Control-Z. That's a common computer keyboard shortcut. And a good thing to get students started with is say, well, what computer keyboard shortcuts do you know? So if they use Control-Z, it will undo what they just did, and you'll see it just removed that tab. So if they use Control followed by the left arrow on the handheld, that will take them back to the previous application. So we're trying to teach the students to navigate properly around the calculator by jumping in and out of the various applications, but also to go searching through the menus. So if they go to calculus, there's only one clue there that has 3 letters, and that gives us the first letter Q for one across as well. So the answer for one down is some, and that tells us that the other one must start with an S. Let's see if my computer's being friendly and letting me open up to PowerPoint again. It is. So sum is the answer for clue 1 down. Slope is the clue for one, or the answer for one across. And then if it's being really nice, and it's not, it would let us go on to geometry construction for 2 down. I'm keen to do that one, so that's the geometry application. So in this case, we've only got 2 applications running at the moment, so we'll go back to the home screen, or I can press Control-I. And it's a great time to run around and give the students hints about the various shortcuts and see what ones they can come up with as well. So we're in a geometry application. And it was a construction, and I'm looking for a 5-letter word in the construction menu, and the only one we have is locus. You weren't going to throw in your line there, Brian?
I need to see the crossword first.
Oh, okay, so we only have one option there for a 5-letter clue, and so 2 down is going to be locus, L-O-C-U-S, and there it is for locus.
So my line is, it had to be locust because grasshopper wouldn't fit. Right.
Oh dear. Okay, I think that's probably a good time to end the crossword. But before I go back to Brian, who's going to show us one of his activities, or one of the activities he likes, we've had requests for material for math methods and specialist maths, also some enrichment material for year 10. Now, I know this is out of order, Brian, the sort of things that we'd discussed, but let's help one of our Queensland teachers out there that asked about what sort of stuff can we do for an enrichment class. So I've just started up a new file and opened up a calculator page, and Brian and I were discussing it. The 2016 is a wonderful year, not because it's prime, but it has something to do with prime numbers, and that's Goldbach's conjecture, and that is that every even number can be written as the sum of 2 primes. Now that doesn't quite work for the number 2 because he assumed that 1 was prime. But if we do every even number above 2, then we can test it on the year 2016. That doesn't prove it, but yeah, let's have a look. So we might start with, well, obviously 2 plus 2014 is not going to work because 2014 is not prime, even though 2 is, so that's not a pair. So I wonder if 3 and 2013, they add to 2016. My
Looks
question
prime
is,
to me.
It does kind of look prime, doesn't it?
2013
would be so lucky.
13 bit on the end, yep.
Yeah, I mean, we might be unlucky because it's 13 on the end. Our math jokes are getting worse, aren't they? And there's this really cool command, and these are the sorts of things your students can go looking for. Let's try 2013, and it says it's false.
Ah, okay. So what's it factors?
So it's not prime. In fact, we can ask it to find factors of not factors. We can ask it to factor 2013. And in fact, you should have known that, Brian, because you know your 61 times tables.
That's right, yeah. It's 61 times 33, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. I've been learning, I only learnt this 61 times table up to 12, though.
Oh, that's why.
That's it.
You didn't go all the way up to 33.
That's right.
Never mind. You failed first year uni on that, did you, when you're doing 61 times tables?
Yeah,
all right, so let's have a look at 2011. We've found another one that's prime. And let's see if its partner would be prime. Well, that would be 5 plus 2011. So yes, it is. So now we've actually found a pair of prime numbers that add to give 2016. So we've solved it. But our next question would be to the students, can you find another pair? So perhaps 7 plus 2009, that sort of looks prime-ish because it ends in a 9, as Brian was suggesting. So is 2009 prime? Let's take one last look.
But 9's not prime.
No, 9 isn't, but is 2009 prime? No, it's not. There's factors of 2009. So our participants, if they don't like Brian and my suggestions about, and we might have just distracted them, of course. It might be like one of those classes where you've suddenly gone off and given them a little challenge to do, and we won't ever get them back. So there you go, there's another one. 1999 was prime, so is its partner 17 prime? I believe it is. So now we've found 2. And if you're giving this to your students, don't let them give up after 10, because there's a lot more than 10 pairs. In fact, that's why 2016 is going to be such a wonderful year, because there's lots of them. So they can go searching. And just while I'm going to send the presentation across to Brian, and he's going to share with us another activity. And just while we're transferring that, another thing you might want to know about primes and why they're so important is in encryption. And there was a lovely movie with Alan, about Alan Turing, wasn't it? I can't remember the name of the movie off the top of my head. Someone might put it in the chat space for us. And that was about coding and encryption. And there's also some nice videos on YouTube about encryption and prime numbers and things like, I'm trying to remember the name of the encryption method they use for...
The Enigma machine.
The Enigma codes is another good one. That was the one that the Alan Turing movie was based on. But there's another one, public key encryption. That's all based on prime numbers as well. So I think it's worthwhile our students know that pretty much our entire society, which is built on online platforms, including things like using credit card purchases, banking, and so on, is based on prime numbers. And if we didn't have them, and in fact if we didn't keep looking for bigger ones, that all that online purchasing would soon fall apart. So they are important. So it's a good one just for students to play around with. So I'm seeing your screen now, Brian. Did you want to jump into that site and find another activity for us? As I said, we've got some methods and specialists and enrichment ideas from people that said they'd like to see something on that.
Methods and specialists coming to the fore. I think people have cottoned into this idea of looking at senior curriculum, so that's good. Just before we do move on, though, on the prime numbers, and what you can find out of a single number, I don't know how many people have had a look at Adam Spencer's book. It's published a couple of years ago. It's only got 100 chapters. Each chapter discusses one number and how special that number is. And
I've just got to let you know on the chat there, Brian, the imitation game. Well done, Kat from Queensland. The imitation game was the name of it, and she just did 2016 is a triangular number.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. And I was, in fact, already aware of that. And do you know why?
How were you aware of that, Brian?
Because you told me. Because Adam Spencer didn't, because his book only went up to 100. But if he had 2016 chapters in it, I can tell you that the 2016th chapter would be an absolute winner. I was heading home yesterday, and the other guy in my carpool was delighted as I flicked through the pages of this book and informed him that he was in the semi-prime of his life. And,
dear.
Yeah, but it took the wind out of his sails when I told him that I was in my absolute prime. So we're back on my screen. You can see that. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to show you some of the secret parts of my computer. And I have a file here, or a directory for TI files. And what I do, I just showed you that you can readily download these things from the internet. I might just quickly show how that does work. So senior curriculum, and select your state. I'm going to go with Victoria because that's where I'm sitting, and maths and methods because that's what I'm teaching, and calculus because that's what I really like, and the activities here, gradient of a function, special functions, take it to the limit. That sounds pretty cool because we're going to do limits. So
that's almost scary in the sense that we just lost the lead singer of the Eagles, didn't we? Was it Glenn Fry, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
Take it to the limit.
Yeah, there we go. More puns. And yes. So once you've gone through the activity, we get an activity overview, and on this one also a little video showing us some of the things that this activity does. Now you can download some of the individual files associated with it, you can click on the bit that says download all files as a zip, and you can see that's happening here, and then I save it to wherever. I'm not going to do that now. But the internet's lovely, but I like keeping things on my own computer, and you can see I've got, say, senior curriculum here, and so I'm going to open up one unit circle on sign, and what's happening here, I've got two PDF documents, one's for the student, one's for the teacher. Let's just have a look. So this is what I would photocopy and give to the students. So
that must have saved your time then, Brian, because that was one of our aims for this webinar, is to try and save teachers time, so giving them pre-prepared worksheets.
Pre-prepared worksheets with, I'll flick down here, so you can see there's screen grabs of the associated calculator file, but also there's parts here, the worksheet for the students to fill in. Now, Peter, I actually used this, there he is, author Peter Fox, P. Fox. I used this last year, would you believe, with the Year 9 class. I know we've got it listed here for methods, but as I was introducing trigonometry, I had that group of students who really should be seeing things a little bit beyond just, triangle ratio sides, but to, right from Year 9, start looking at unit circle. So I didn't want this for the whole class, but the worksheet was sufficiently self-explanatory that I could just give it to a small group of students and say, there you go, read that, talk about it among yourselves, and use the associated TI-Nspire file. This is it here. I'm just opening it up. So here it comes. It's opened in my calculator here. And instructions even within the file. So it really is giving the students everything they need. And look how beautifully interactive this is. I've got, we've all done this before for, a unit circle, but what's happening here, I can click on this one and it's labelling the quadrants, so we have this sort of language, or I can switch it off, or I can move my point around the circle, this clicker here, so you see the angle changes. Oh, and by the way, with my Year 9 class, at first I didn't want to talk about radians. I talked about the angle in degrees, and they were happy with this idea. We talked about, the sine being the y coordinate of that point. We talked about why it's a unit circle, of course, and they can see what's happening here as we change that angle and make it greater. Because I excluded the conversation on radians, when I came back later on to say, well, how did you go? What would you like to talk about? They wanted to know. They'd seen this. They wanted to know about radians, and they pretty much had worked out what they were, or at least the equivalence to the correspondence to degree angle.
One thing that I used to teach students, Brian, was gradients, and not many people do that, but it was an interesting add-on, I believe, by engineers, and I think they'd probably be the only ones using them. And I used it because I said to the students, why do we have 360 degrees in a circle? And I said, that's kind of silly, isn't it? Why don't we just make it a metric thing, and we'll make it 400?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going metric now, and we'll go 400, and the students can actually put their calculator in gradient mode and check some of these calculations. So if they were doing the sine of 45 degrees, it comes out as the same as sine as 50, because instead of having 90 degrees in a right angle, we've got 100. So it's a metric circle. And then we discussed why didn't we persist with that. And then we talk about factors of 360 and so on. But I found it was a nice sort of segue to get the students understanding radians, is that 360 was chosen because of a base 60 and the number of factors and so on, and that radians was chosen essentially for calculus in one way, is that it provides a much easier system to work with angles when we're using calculus.
And it is also interesting that the default angle setting on the senior calculators is radians, not degrees.
Yeah.
Of course, that can be universally reset, but basically for the more advanced mathematics, it's radians. So here's the other other part of the activity where we're looking at sine of 35 degrees, comparing it to the sine of 145 degrees. And there's a little hint thing we can switch on. So I just think that some of these constructions are fantastic. I don't build this sort of stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I just download it and use it. Talk to Peter. He's the one who builds it. That's one there. So I recommend that. And as I said, it's classroom trialled with my Year 9 class, and they thought that was fine. So I'll be using it again with a methods class this year. And I think we're running short of time. Can I show another one quickly, Peter?
Yes, certainly can.
We have had a bit of a request for the senior curriculum ones, and circles on a complex plane, because if we're starting with specialist mathematics at the moment, that's quite likely one of your first topics. And I just thought this was just such a beautiful lead-in. Once again, credit to Peter for writing it. But just look at the introduction here. Now, what numbers are 3 units away from 2 on the real number line? Okay, there's something I can relate to. It's a constructivist learning type thing. I already know how to do that. And then we're gradually getting into this business of complex numbers. Okay, z equaling x plus yi. We talked through how to access that on your calculator, and the complex I. So this is the student worksheet we're looking at, and so we use the mathematical operations template, and we want to solve the absolute value of z minus 2 equals 3. So it's similar to what we started with up here, but how is this going to be different? And then we get this appearing. I won't work through it all now, but we've got with the associated file.
And just while that file is opening up, Brian, there's a companion video that goes with that particular activity that goes through with the students. So if the students can't follow the activity very well or don't get enough of the information from it, they can watch the companion video.
Yes.
In fact, if you get onto YouTube, and it's interesting, you don't need to do it now, that was rhetorical. If they search for something like circles on the Argand plane, it'll hit my little video up there a lot quicker, because not many people type in Argand plane, they tend to type complex plane, and there's quite a few on YouTube about circles on the complex plane. And it talks about the fact that if the real number system is on a line, complex numbers are on a plane. So rather than seeing 2 solutions, we see quite a number of solutions to that same question, and that's indeed why we see a circle.
And scalar resolute, if you see them on my screen now, we've got the little QR code here. So people at home, if you've got your mobile phone, and if you've got a QR code scanner, then if you scan that, it'll give you the YouTube web link.
I do have one for the complex numbers one. I'm going to put that back up on the site, Ron, and that way they'll be able to do the same with that one. And those videos have been designed to watch on a mobile phone. I mean, you can watch them on the computer, but yes, they've been designed to pick up on a mobile phone by making sure the text is big enough for them to see what's going on.
Yep, I actually gave this to some students today, Peter, and they were delighted to do that. It wasn't that one. It was actually circles on a complex plane. The QR scan isn't on the document. Yeah, I've got an older version of it.
Put one on top.
Yeah. But here you see on the scalar resolute, you can follow that, and you'll get the website. Tell us through the chat window if that's working for you.
It's interesting though, Brian, because I asked my own daughter, does she know what a QR code was, and at first she didn't, but she kind of got used to them now. But it's interesting because not all the students know about them. So yes, there's a link there that students can use as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the QR code's basically for people who are too lazy to copy a link or type it into a browser. Now, as I warned before, I won't play the audio. because it won't work in the time for the webinar. But it's pretty cool, and there's so much stuff there, so much there on YouTube. And this is Australian. It's local. It's for our local curriculum. So very approachable for
people are interested in flipping their classrooms. It's something that I've tried and experimented around a little bit with before, and that is, if you're about to teach a topic, it might be simultaneous equations, it might be vectors or something similar. Have the students go and learn not just the actual how to do it on a calculator, but there's lots of ones on the actual mathematics as well. The ones that we've produced obviously blend the mathematics, as you're seeing on the screen now, with the actual calculator instructions, so it's kind of doing both. But you can always ask the students to watch a few videos, either how to on a calculator or how to do it by hand, and get them to report back to you, say which video was the best. And it's interesting because if you get them to analyse, say, 3 videos, I found that the students didn't need my teaching the next day because they'd learned it all from the video anyway, and they didn't have to listen to me.
Yeah, much more effective use of class time, and I think also perhaps more effective learning, shall we say.
Yeah, and you do get an insight to how the students want to learn based on the sorts of videos that they're choosing. Some students are almost dead on the 3-minute mark. You know, they don't want to watch anything more than 3 minutes.
Well, but they're short clips. Like, how long's this one? There we go, 7 minutes for this one.
Yeah.
I think
we try and keep them short and sharp.
Isn't it? Yep. Okay, well, I might send us back to you, Peter.
All right, I'll just my computer start. So let me see if I can drag that back.
I can see here 3D graphing. Now that's something pinched out of one of my webinars.
It probably is.
It is.
And it's up on YouTube, right? There we go.
Yes.
It's also available on our on-demand site as well, so you can watch videos on demand from our website. So here's another one, and this will be the last one because we're just about out of time. This one is for domain and range, and one of the things that we're trying to get across with the calculator and what we're trying to emphasize is the calculator is not just a tool to generate answers. As you'll have seen from some of the selections we've tried to align to people's requests, is that it's a very visual tool. So hopefully you'll see that it's a place where students can learn from as well. So this one's on domain and range, and it gives the students some tips on how to actually grab objects on their calculator. But again, if they've installed the computer software, they can do exactly as Brian and I are doing now and using a computer mouse, which is my preference. So here we've got a series of points placed across the Cartesian plane. We can see the coordinates of the points appearing down the bottom of the screen there, and we can drag point P around the screen and talk about how the X values are mapping onto specific Y values. Now, as a teacher, one of the early things you talk about with function mapping is it a function, doing a vertical line test, and in this case we can see there's a point right there and there's a point down here. So our X value lands on this one at 5,4 and lands on this one at 5, -3. So we can ask the question, does it pass our vertical line test? We can see it visually from the points, but we can now also see from the coordinates that we have an X value of 5 mapping onto -3 and an X value of 5 mapping onto 4. So one value for X has mapped onto 2 different Y values. So that's a visual way of doing it. Another way we often see done is this, where we have a set of values shown on the left-hand side in a little bubble, mapping onto a set of values on the right-hand side. So we've got our X values labelled domain and our Y values labelled range. We can see that 2 maps onto -5, 3 maps onto -2, 0 maps onto 3, -4 maps onto 4, and up here, an unusual occurrence where 5 mapped onto both 4 and -3. You could perhaps even look back as that's similar to the one on the previous page, where 5 mapped onto 4 and also to -3. So are these indeed the same things or not? Are they just different representations of the same thing? And which one do students prefer in terms of trying to understand the mathematics? Then we have the usual function in a box sort of thing, where we've called this one type 1, and we can go all the way back to the start. And I'm not sure what your memory's like. It's probably better than mine. And I want to know, did any of those x values repeat? Did any of the y values repeat? Is this a one-to-one function? How are the values in the input being mapped to the output? Do we want to graph them? Do we want to write them down as coordinates? And the worksheet takes them through the option. And we've got another one, type 2. We won't go through all the different types, but you can kind of gather there's 4 types on what they might be. And then another visual representation here, where we can drag point P and have a look at the domain being created on the x-axis in blue and the range in red. And once that's been traced out, the students can always hit reset and those lines will go away, ready for the next time they want to test it. A step function. And then finally, there's a couple of other ones. This one's one of my favorites, and that is the actual question sheet requires students to move that line to create the specified domain and range. And it's purposely put in a way so that students have to actually reverse the direction of it. And one of them, I think the question says that the range is only equal to 3. And for that we get a horizontal line. Or we can get something like that and see multiple values for y for one single value for x. But the students move that line around to try and match the required or the specified domain and range. Again, just another way of actually getting the kids to interact and find visual representations. Now I'm closely watching the time, and I know that we're pretty much out of time, so let's just finish off with one final note, and that is that there it is, 2016, interesting year, and you can see lots of these getting started activities on our website. We went through some of the other PD opportunities, and try using YouTube to flip the classrooms. That's kind of a summary of what we went through this evening. We do have a lot more webinars coming up. Brian mentioned the complex numbers. That is actually one of our webinars coming up. So if you're interested in specialist maths, get back in and register for that one. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Brian for all his efforts this evening and for sharing us his experience. You still there, Brian?
I am indeed.
Okay, so thank you, Brian, and also thank you for all of those people that attended our webinar tonight. And if you wanted to review any of the material, it will be available for download from our website next week. A couple of people asked about the links that Brian had in his PowerPoint. That PowerPoint will be available for download at the video, so we can bundle some of these activities in, including the crossword puzzle and so on, so that when you revisit that on our website, you'll be able to download the activities that we've gone through tonight, or you can just jump straight on the website. So, thanks for joining us. And
yep. I was just going to say, can I encourage people, don't just wait for the package from us. Get proactive, get on the website and hunt down the stuff that specifically applies to your class.
Yes,
There's
I agree.
So much good stuff there. Yep.
All right, so thanks everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you again or hear from you again on our next webinar. That's all for this evening. Thank you.